Well, I think we can get started. Well, my name is Fabiano. The presentation I will be trying to show you will be about tips and tricks about Plone development for mobile platforms. Well, I'm from Brazil. I'm one of the guys that came to Brazil here this year. And so, by the way, if you want to talk about the next conference and we are curious about what kind of event we are planning to host next year, just come to me. I'll try to find the other guys from Brazil. Well, I contributed some lines to archetypes and ArcGen XML many years ago, but my last Plone conference was in 2004, so it was a long time ago, around 8 years. So more or less it's like my first time again. In the last years, I have been involved in my master thesis, so more or less I never left Plone development, but I had been a little far from the core. And actually, I had been working in Brazil as a consultant, doing trainings and managing servers. This talk, I'll try to cover some topics on this talk. The first is how Plone could be used to publish content for mobile platforms. By mobile platforms, I mean smartphones and tablets, mostly. And this talk cannot be a very, very technical one. I think the main idea behind this talk is trying to discuss the aspects involved on this situation. And the main topics are related to mobile web development best practices. It's nothing new. The best practices by itself are outside there during a long time, but I think it's nice to discuss a little about it, just because people usually talk a lot about best practice, but I know very few people that actually had recommendations and things like that. So we'll talk a little about HTML5 and about native applications for, Android, iPhone, and so on. Some background. So in the last few months, I have been working for Serpro in Brazil. Serpro is that company. It's a little bit difficult to explain what Serpro is. It's a slightly different company, but basically it's an IT company, mostly an IT company that works for the government of Brazil, the federal government. And it's owned by the government also. So it's a work company with around 10,000 employees. And, well, more or less around 15 to 20% of everything they do is Plone. So they are rouge on Plone. And Serpro has been concerned about mobile developments during some time. And they hired me as a consultant to try to define good ways to do that things for Plone applications. Since they have a lot of Plone applications, they are concerned about the right way of publishing content from Plone on mobile device. We have a lot of Plone portals running on Brazilian government, and in general, they are not mobile friendly. So if you try to get your smartphone and access a portal, they usually are based on old versions of Plone with a lot of customizations. So usually they are not friendly. So it's something that you need to talk about, because I think we are reaching a point that you need to, to understand how things are going in the future. That's a quote from the Paulo Bernardo, the Brazilian Minister of Communications, that Brazil is going to have 1 billion mobile devices with internet access in 2020. I'm a little bit skeptical about this kind of stuff, but that's a fact. In June of this year, Brazil had 46.6 million smartphones and tablets with 3G connection. It's a lot, especially because Brazil have around 190 million people. And if you try to count all mobile phones you have today, you have more mobile phones than people. So it's something important to try to think how important it is when you realize that one of the missions of the government is to deliver content for the normal people, to common people, that usually, for a lot of them, the main channel to access internet are mobile devices. They are even more popular than computers, so it's quite important to see all this stuff on this point of view. So everybody's going mobile, and what about Plone? That's the question. Plone has been involved in really, really nice user interface since the beginning of the project. It has been our main features since the project beginning, and it's a long time that you were concerned about mobile, but things has been changed. And I believe that it's important to look what kind of stuff you can do today. Well, basically on mobile platforms, I try to, it's my personal opinion. It's not a disciple, but I believe that information needs to be easy to understand and to access, and more than that, data reliability and security are very important points. Especially in Brazil, our networks are very bad quality. And it's a shame, because in Brazil we had situations some months ago that the internet companies were forbidden to sell more mobile phones until solving some technical problems. So in a rugged country like Brazil, that kind of issue would not be something that we need to face, but it happens. So, well, speed is important, of course. Reliability, security, and speed are important, but something that you cannot forget is about the network latency, especially for mobile applications that run on mobile networks that are not so good. And especially in Brazil, mobile technology is still quite expensive. I think I read somewhere that the most expensive iPad in the world is the Brazilian one, mostly because we pay a lot of taxes, and you have no choice. If you want to get access to that kind of technology, you need to pay that taxes plus the price. people from the United States and Europe are used to pay. So, general tips. I will start to, from now, after this big picture, I start to give some tips and try to highlight points that I think could be tricky when you are facing a mobile project. Most of that tips comes from the W3C recommendations, and somehow I try to summarize them on the presentation just to make the whole idea a little bit easier to understand. But I think that it's very important for people that's coming to mobile market and are trying to develop real code to read that recommendations, that official recommendations. So, the limitations of the mobile device, I mean the network speed are not that great. The mobile device are slow. They have very low memory. So usually simple web applications are better. When I say simple, I mean to keep it down. The document object model is small and limits the number of CSS selector you use. It looks a little, conservative, but it's necessary, especially because some browsers have strict limits for how big your data could be on mobile devices. I think that IA version 9 has some CSS selector limits that are not so great, so big, and it's important to feel to handle that. Well, of course, in desktop you have the very same problem, but in mobile device we need to be more careful about how much round trip time you lose. Especially, it's important to use fewer HTTP requests. Not only because the speed, usually the networks are getting more and more speed, but the latency is not something that is going to be solved soon. So it's important to be careful. And of course, with JavaScript code, that could be very tricky. So how many of you have had one of that recommendations? No one? Maybe one? Two, okay. That's a shame. I think they are not that complex. They are not that, time consuming, but they are very important, especially for who is going to start with mobile. One of the parts that I were asked to do for Serpo was to write a book about this, especially because, Brazilian people usually don't speak English, so for us it's not that simple, not only to give a talk, but especially to have a real understanding of some kinds of recommendations and technical documents. So they asked me to do a book about that. And probably this book is, I think that it's not going to be translated to English, but at least in Brazil it's going to be used as a kind of startup guide for who is going to develop code for a mobile device at the government. So please read that. It's not that difficult, okay? In my opinion, the most important aspects of mobile development are portability, usability, accessibility, security, and of course they are, in a conference like Plone conference, don't need to be very detailed on all this stuff, but especially portability is not simple to do. some years ago, we were used to develop code, thinking in portability, trying to create one code that runs on several platforms. Today are not more used to the code we are creating, but to what kind of standard, what kind of format we are going to follow. That's where the HTML5 takes place, mostly because, you know, well, I can try to explain that after. But basically, HTML5 is becoming a reality. HTML5 is probably going to have its final version in 2014. And I think that new recommendation will be what to, you know, standardize the mobile development market. Today, we'll have no standard at all. Every single company that creates a mobile phone usually creates its own development platform. So you have to learn different languages and different frameworks to create software for Android, for iPhone, and well, somehow things seem that are walking to start to use HTML5 to create this kind of application for mobile. Something that's important to talk a little is about security. Well, Plone has been doing a really great work at the security level. And how many of you know what OWASP is? Okay. OWASP means the Open Web Application Security Project. Is more like an organization without any association with trademarks or companies. They are more focused on technology and practices than try to sell something. And they have been publishing their documents about security, and that documents have been used for as a reference for who is going to manage security risks. Some months ago, they published something new called the Top 10 Mobile Controls. It's a document very similar to OWASP Top 10 Security Risks that, you know, we had a version of Top 10 in 2007 and another in 2010. But that new one about mobile controls is brand new. Basically, you can read that document on OWASP website, but they show that 10 topics here, and I think it's something that could be advised for who is going to manage manage the security of mobile applications. Usually, I think the mobile applications could be very, very tricky to manage from the security point of view, especially because that kind of applications are exposed to risks that normal web applications are not. Like, you know, you lose your mobile phone somewhere with some data inside it, and this data could be leaked or could be used to leak more sensitive information. And of course, we have other concerns about privacy, about how the data is transmitted between the mobile device and the server side. So it's important to take a look on that mobile controls. Of course, I will not read them. There's no reason for that. but it's interesting. Okay, so let's suppose we're doing everything okay. Everybody knows how supposedly mobile web applications should be done, and we are going to focus on our subject and try to find a way to publish content managed by Plone for mobile device. Usually you have 3 different kinds of choice. They are not mutually exclusive, but they are more or less based on a responsive web design approach that Plone have been trying to follow, and HTML5 code that mimics native interface. It's quite different from responsive design. Usually responsive design is a web layout that is adjusted based on the features that this device has. So for devices with bigger screens or higher resolutions, the design could be bigger, and for devices with smaller screens or devices that do not support colors and so on, the whole design could be adapted. Trying to mimic the native interface using HTML5 is different, but it's not that different when you try to compare the whole process of development for real native applications. Real native applications, the role development is very costly. It's not that easy to do that. So, at least in my opinion, I believe that the development of native web applications is something that could be avoided. In practice, it demands experts on several languages, platforms, mostly because the same app needs to be developed several times. You need a different version for iPhone, a different version for Android, and it's complex, and it costs money, it takes time. It's not that difficult to do, but it's something that takes a lot of time to do. Of course, when you try to do native apps, you have some advantages, but you need to decide if that advantage are something you really need. Especially, you really need to use native apps when you need absolute performance. Today, mobile devices getting, very powerful. However, you could not imagine that every single user will have a powerful mobile phone. I think that in some years, we could assume that our applications could use more abstract frameworks that will have some, some overhead. But in practice, you have a lot of old devices running, and sometimes the right decision is to write native apps that will have better performance. The other reason that could explain a native app development is trying to exploit better features from the user interface. It's the case of Facebook that some days ago had published that their HTML5 app for mobile phones were a mistake. Well, I don't read that as a real mistake, especially because they are doing that for a long time. And despite it's quite slow, actually, it works, and it were a solution for a long time. I think if it's just a signal, they are more concerned about the quality of what they are doing, but it's not that a problem. So, as I said before, I think that an interesting way to develop code for mobile devices is using HTML5. Something that is very interesting to do the native development for mobile devices using HTML5 is something called PhoneGap. Well, I will try to do a fast demo from PhoneGap, just to make sure you know what it is. That's PhoneGap. So PhoneGap started as a project from a company called Nitobi, I think. That company was bought by Adobe, and I think that the core of the project is open source, and it's hosted as an Apache project. I don't remember the right name of the Apache project, but I'm pretty much sure that's open source. Basically, the main idea behind the PhoneGap is to develop native mobile applications using HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. And just that. So, like Martin Fancy showed in a previous presentation, today it's quite common to develop client-side applications using plain HTML code, and it's not that difficult to translate that kind of application to a native app. So that's the proposal of PhoneGap. So basically, we can create an HTML5 application and upload it to something called build.phonegap.com. And here, you can sync using your GitHub account. And here, you can create your mobile apps. So basically, you do the upload of your application in a zip file or just point. Let me try to show you. And I'm not sure about the network, but it's something like this. We can find a Git repository, or upload a zip file, and after that, something like this is built. The interesting here is you don't need to write any code to create that native applications. And you have your code on Android, WebOS, Windows Phone, Symbian, BlackBerry, iPhone, and I think there is a iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, Palm, WebOS, Bada is from Samsung, and Symbian. So it's a lot of stuff just doing HTML5. I have been testing and working with PhoneGap during some time, and I can assure you it's really, really great to work. It's very, it's very simple, it's very natural to develop code using that, and it's not a nightmare. You just need to write plain HTML5 code and nothing else. So, if you are not trying to follow that way, so if you, for some reason, decide that you don't need a native application and you are trying to follow the responsive design approach, how it works in practice? Well, basically, Plone version 4, Plone 4 already do that. I think it's not something we have been doing a great market about, but it's something that's already done. And basically, the whole technique is something that could be used by integrators and designers when you are going to create your Diazo themes. So I will try to show you more or less how it works. That's Firefox version 15. On Firefox version 15, you have something like this. Just a second. Just because the window is too big. Okay, so basically on Firefox 15 we have this. There is a shortcut to do that. It's, let me see, it's here. Well, the shortcut is Ctrl-Shift-M, the letter M. So here we can change the layout of the portal and change the orientation just to prove with our design is getting well adapted to different sizes of the screens. It's something that Plone 4 already does. It's not that difficult, and it's based on something called CSS Media Queries. Okay? Let me show some other examples. This is a very known example for who is used to the wholly responsive web design idea, the Boston Globe website. So we can see that for bigger screens, we have some disposition of the information, and when we start to get smaller, the disposition changes until a point it fits inside a smartphone. It's not that difficult to do that. I will show you how. And it's just a matter to understand the whole idea behind the responsive web design. It's not that difficult. Okay? So you don't need anything new. You don't need no new tools. Just understand the whole idea behind the patterns involved, the recommendations involved, and what is and how CSS Media Queries works. Okay? Before I forget, there is a theme for Plone, a very good one, made by my friends from Simples Consultoria, called beyondskins.responsive. That also has support for this. Let me show you. So if you go here, let's enable the support for Diazo. And after that, you can import a zip file with the layout that's here. So there is two different ways to install a ISO 10. The first is using the build out, and the second one is doing that, something like this. So you do the import, and after that, it's okay, it's working, and it's responsive too. As you may see, until 800 pixels or something, that region is more like the default Plone 10, and below it's changed for something like this. Okay? It's not difficult, and it works. Well, so the first point is, when you are going mobile and you decide to publish content that is managed by Plone, we are in practice creating a mobile version of your Plone site. It's a different skin, or just a skin that adapts based on CSS Media Queries, based on the features of your mobile device. However, it's not that simple when you try to adapt content that is not usually supported by mobile device. The main example here is Shockwave Flash. Shockwave Flash, you know, is something that's deaf. Shockwave Flash just has no feature on mobile device, and to do that, we need to understand and follow the recommendations of HTML5 to manage images, audio, and video. To do that, there is something called Modernizer. Modernizer is a JavaScript library that makes it easier to create code, HTML5 code, based on the features, the browser features. So using Modernizer is not that difficult to create portable code, even for features like, you know, video and audio, especially because video and audio formats supported by the different browsers are not compatible. It's something that is always under discussion, and especially on Firefox, I think it's something that's going to change someday, especially because Firefox is very open source focused and do not support any format that has any issue about patents and license, but especially on MEP4 format, I think it's going to work someday. And of course, Plone already uses that. Modernizer is already inside Plone 4.2. It's just use it. It's shipped with Plone. Okay, that's the Modernizer website. It's very well documented. It's very, very powerful too. So the last topic is CSS Media Queries. The final recommendation of CSS Media Queries is from June of this year, so it's quite recent. And the whole idea behind CSS Media Queries is you are able to create CSS styles that you run only on devices that support some kind of feature. So Using CSS Media Queries, you are able to define what CSS should be used when your screen has, let's say, at least 500 pixels, or the max device width is 810 pixels, or things like, or the orientation. The third example here is the orientation. So, you know, it's interesting to have different styles for a mobile device that is portrait or in landscape orientation, and that's pretty easy to do that. The Boston Globe website I showed you before, here, basically it uses that a lot. That's why you have this. Okay? I think it's something you need to use more, and you need to advertise our web designers to use more, especially because it's simple, it works, and it will avoid a rouge tons of problems that could be faced when you start to think that you need to create a different version for mobile than your main website, and you need to, you know, to detect when the device is a mobile phone or not, and try to redirect, and after give an option to turn back. So if you are using CSS Media Queries, you don't need to do that. It's just one website with all the content, and the whole layout will be adapted to the features supported by the device. So my final tip is about the second kind of my second approach, related to when you decide to create a mobile website that mimics the look and feel of native interfaces. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it is exactly what you want to do. You want to have a really different interface for public website and for mobile versions. And you want to do that, especially the visual look and feel is important to make the usability more, the usability near to what the users are used to do, especially on forms and the way how the page is used. So my tip for you is take a look on something called jQuery Mobile. jQuery Mobile is this. It's a project that were created by the same creators of jQuery, and it's something that will help you to create applications with the very same controls that Android and iPhone usually does, for navigation, for lists, for forms, and so on. It's very simple to use, and especially the CSS code, the styles shipped with the jQuery Mobile are great. So even if you decide to not use the framework, I think the styles could be used, and they are really, really great. And finally, this is something called Theme Roller. Theme Roller is the jQuery UI version for jQuery Mobile. So usually it's not that simple when you try to create a website using jQuery, especially when we want to create a different look and feel, using a different set of colors and styles. So Theme Roller helps you to do that on jQuery Mobile using the very same pattern of jQuery UI. To demonstrate that in practice, I create an example for you using the ASO. The example is very simple. Basically, all you need to do is something like this, an HTML file template that uses 3 lines to use the jQuery mobile code. So you have here the base styles, some JavaScript from jQuery, and some JavaScript from jQuery mobile. And of course, you have this. This is something it's already inside Plone 4, and it's very useful to render correctly the size of viewport, especially when you this is an invention from Apple. It was made firstly for Safari web browser, but despite it's not inside any recommendation, it works and it's supported on every major browser. So basically it's just an HTML file template with some places to put the title, a navigation bar, the content, and a footer. And of course, you need a rules file. It's pretty simple. It's just a matter to replace the generated content on the back end on the right position of our template. So I will show it running. I will import that example. It's here. And now we have something like this. All these styles are automatically made by jQuery Mobile. And, well, they don't look quite bad, but they are done that way just because, for accessibility reasons, it's important to have all the links you click to have a minimum size. Especially because, you know, you are acting over something that is quite small, and your finger is not that small. So our links must have a minimal size to be used in practice. That's it. That's not difficult. And it works on every major platform supported by jQuery Mobile. So it will work on Android, on iPhone, on, you know, every platform. Okay, so I think that's it. At least the main ideas behind the whole work about going mobile were exposed. I think that is a lot to talk about, but I really would be glad if you had more questions to reach me, and I would be glad to, you know, to discuss about everything. Questions?
When you did the jQuery mobile stuff, has all the CSS from the regular Plone site been discarded, or was there something left? Was there only the CSS file from jQuery mobile, or did you also still have some styles from the Plone site itself?
Okay. On this example I show you, I just used the CSS from jQuery Mobile and nothing else. But it's something that you could change. If you want, you can use all the whole Plone CSS, and over it you can use the jQuery mobile CSS also. It's a matter of choice. Just for the lack of simplicity, I just use it the jQuery mobile and nothing else. More questions?
Actually, it's not really a question. It's just one more tip, because I really struggled with mobile native application and used PhoneGap for it. But our goal was a design which wasn't the normal PhoneGap, or the normal native design. So we just used jQuery and HTML, CSS, and kind of things. And one thing which really made me a lot of headache was the response time of a click event, which is 300 milliseconds, because it waits for a second click if that's maybe a double click. So there's one nice thing Google actually developed. It's called fast button. So, and this one guy also changed it that you can use it with jQuery and even other frameworks. So fast button from Google is a really good way to have responsive, I mean, not responsive design, less latency, other waiting time for response of any event you use, other for touch devices.
Yeah.
jQuery Mobile has this nice thing where you can have multiple pages within one HTML thing that, you know, and when you use it with PhoneGap, you can, you know, it's all preloaded at that time and doesn't have to go back and bring that page in.
They have.
Have you thought about how to do that in Plone?
I can show you an example now. Let me catch it. It's just a second. Basically, the example I show you, inside the PhoneGap is this. I just didn't show you the code, but the code is exactly what you asked for. The code is that one. So basically, when you have an application that in practice is just a single page with navigation inside the page that mimics different pages, it's something that jQuery Mobile already does for you. It's something that's made, actually it uses exactly the same approach than Martin Jansen showed before today. It's the very same thing. It's something like, let me see, like this. So here you have a link that goes to page one. A page one is this. It's something that is inside a data role attribute. So it's more like more or less like if you have several pages inside a single HTML file that mimics different pages, but in practice it's just one page. Is actually to avoid the latency and the network round trips, just because the whole code is just one file. I don't know if I answered.
Well, I guess my question is there a way that can be given to the content editor so they can specify this page, this page, this page are all preloaded and everything else is dynamically loaded, like some kind of plugin that would work with Plone to, with jQuery Mobile? Has anyone done that?
I think so. There is a preloading feature. I don't remember now how it works, but it's just an attribute on the link that you say is that this link should be preloaded just to speed the navigation, something like this. I don't remember, but I think it is perfect fine to do.
Okay.
Mikko.
I think you should forget this idea about Ajax loading of the pages because it really doesn't work, and on old Android browsers it will crash after 20 pages. And unless you are going to update all the Android browsers in the world, just do it like a normal way, okay?
I did not got it. I can talk a few about after that. So that's it. Thank you.